Well, today is May 3rd. May 3rd, 2014. The time is 5:44 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I just got back from grocery shopping. I'm in a lot of pain right now. I have to literally buy enough groceries to last me for an entire month because I pretty much don't go anywhere. I can't really go anywhere. I'm partially paralyzed. I'm bleeding internally. I've had organs inside of me explode from being poisoned by my wife and by her fuck buddies in law enforcement and by their bros that cover for their asses. It's hard for me to breathe. I don't have emphysema. I don't have any. I've always been a healthy person all my life. I was strong as an ox, healthy ass person until my wife started poisoning me. And she started poisoning me when she was sleeping around with a bunch of fucking Portland pedophile police officers and a bunch of Multnomah County pedophile sheriffs. Here in Portland, Oregon, the Multnomah County sheriffs and the Portland police have a long history of womanizing with people and organizing people in unofficial sting operations, or at least that's what they would refer to it as. Like if they're, in other words, if they're caught in it, they may refer to it as a sting operation. But generally, they don't even admit to most of their sting operations, because most of their sting operations actually involve law enforcement and their buddies and their girlfriends. It actually involves them committing crimes. So they generally do not admit to most of the sting operations that they are involved in. And their type of sting, here's the Multnomah County Sheriff and the Portland Police Department's idea of a sting operation. They'll sleep around with your wife. They'll recruit your wife into their sting operations. And then they'll immediately target that woman's husband. And they'll teach that they'll teach that woman they're womanizing with how to poison her husband to death. And they teach that woman how to pedify her husband. And they teach women this. They teach men this too, but more often than not, it's women that they recruit into this shit. Why? Because law enforcement is womanizers and is mostly male, and they womanize. That's why. Cops love to recruit women into sting operations because they can. When they train women in sting operations, they teach women how to frame people. Now, in my situation, they recruited my wife into an affair. So they had somebody that was living with me targeting me. And they're telling her the whole time to pretend to be a loving wife to my face. The whole fucking time they're telling her to try to hide it from me. So she pretended to be a loving wife while her fuck buddies in law enforcement bugged our apartment, and and with video and audio equipment, and they immediately brought in a look-alike. That's right, folks. Your law enforcement use look-alikes, doubles. Just like Hollywood does, law enforcement uses doubles. You have no idea how fond law enforcement is of the use of doubles and photogenic photos and doubles and fuzzy video surveillance. You have no fucking idea how much they love that concept. That's why when law enforcement bugs a person's apartment, they usually go into the attic and they put cameras up there, and they put audio recording outlets in all the walls where where you have your power outlets. Where you see power outlets, they'll take off the cover of the power outlet, remove the power plug thing in there. They put in a new one, and it's got a hidden audio thing in there. Now I don't know if it works off of I'm assuming it works off of some sort of Wi-Fi system. I don't know. To be honest, that's my personal opinion. I never actually tried getting one of those devices. I'm sure I could right now because I know they got this apartment bugged. So and I've actually taken off one of the covers just to examine them, and I don't see any unusual wires, so I know damn well that it's probably some sort of a Wi-Fi system. But anyway, they usually put the video camera shit up in the attics. So and I don't know, they put like a pinhole or some damn thing in the ceiling or whatever, so that they can something that you can't really notice. With the naked eye, you can't really notice. That way, they get a top down view. And you know why they like that? You know why they love to have that top down view? Because they use doubles. Right away, they bring in doubles. As soon as they're targeting somebody, they bring in a double. Every fucking time. That's one of law enforcement's big secrets that news media doesn't tell people about. They don't want people to know about that. News media looks the other way every time law enforcement brings in doubles. Everybody has heard of prostitution stings, where law enforcement takes over an entire motel and for their operations. And then they have a bunch of their female officers and even some of their female girlfriends that'll dress up like a bunch of prostitutes, and then they'll act like a bunch of prostitutes in order to frame and entrap people. Everybody's heard of that. And of course, everybody's heard of sting operations where they have drug bustings, where law enforcement will quite literally take over an entire street for their sting operations. And of course, all the buildings, all the apartment buildings in those areas that cooperate with those drug sting operations are a part of it and are cooperating with law enforcement. In other words, lying for law enforcement and helping law enforcement to frame people. So apartment managers and motel managers and apartment owners and motel owners cooperate with police sting operations. So that's already common knowledge. Now, isn't it? Isn't it? Everybody already knows that, okay? That's pretty much the only thing people have common knowledge about when it comes to sting operations. Guess fucking what? Almost everything law enforcement and their buddies and their girlfriends do is a sting operation. If they're patrolling the fucking streets, it's a sting operation. You know why they treat everything that they do as a sting operation? Because as long as they're operating under the pretense of a sting operation, they're free to lie. They're free to stage crimes. They're free to put on any pretense they want. They're even free to lie under oath in order to maintain their covert operations. Government permits them to do that. So pretty much, they're 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. They're pretty much operating under the pretense of a sting operation. And they're even permitted to recruit civilians in sting operations. Every time you've heard of a prostitution sting, guess what? They've recruited all the motel employees and the motel managers into that sting. So there are civilians that are involved in setting people up. and they were recruited by law enforcement. Guess what? When they do drug bustings, guess what? They recruited the apartment managers and apartment maintenance personnel into those sting operations. So there's more civilians. So see, sting operations, police are allowed by the government and permitted by the government to recruit civilians into their operations. Okay, now keep that in mind. Most people would deem that criminal conspiracy. And I want to point out the fact that your news media deliberately and intentionally mums the word about the cooperation of motel managers and motel employees and apartment managers and apartment maintenance personnel when it comes to police sting operations. There mums the word about it. They don't want people to think. They don't want people to think about it very much. Out of sight, out of mind. When it's not mentioned, you don't think about it. Okay? Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, because technically they're involved in criminal conspiracies. When law enforcement does a sting operation, they always use video surveillance, always. When they do prostitution stings, they use video surveillance. When they do drug bust stings, they use video surveillance. Well, guess what? If they're targeting specific people, where those specific people live, they do the same fucking thing. And just like in a prostitution sting or a drug bust sting, they want to have full control of the surrounding area. So when they target a specific person, such as myself, when they target a specific person, they gain the cooperation. I live in a motel, an apartment here. I live right here in an apartment. They gain the cooperation of the apartment manager and the maintenance personnel and recruit them into their sting operation, and they acquire several apartments surrounding their target in order to control the surrounding area for their operations. Now, the reason they do that is because they can stage a crime just like they do when they do prostitution stings or they do drug bustings. It's no different. They can stage a crime for the purpose of either trying to entrap me or to frame me or to set me up for a crime or to give me the blame for a crime. And because I'm surrounded by these operatives, and all of which are paid to target me and to set me up, you know, they're permitted, because it's a sting operation, they're permitted to lie, they're permitted to stage crimes, they're permitted to actually commit crimes for the purpose of entrapping people and framing people. They're permitted to do this. Government has always allowed their officers to recruit civilians into sting operations, and these sting operatives, whether they be officers or civilians, are permitted to lie to people, they're permitted to recruit people, they're permitted to organize people, they're permitted to turn people against their target, and that's generally what they do. So technically, they'll take over several apartments. Just like they'll take over a whole fucking motel, they'll take over several apartments surrounding mine, and they can stage freaking crimes. Now, since my wife was having an affair with somebody in law enforcement, this was personal. Them targeting me was personal. And they weren't just targeting me, they were targeting my parents. They killed my parents. They murdered my parents. The whole time, they were setting me up to get the blame for their shit. And the whole time, they had the cooperation of my wife. They had the cooperation of my wife's relatives. And they had the cooperation of our landlords and our apartment managers. And the whole time, they destroyed my name and reputation behind my back while my wife looked me in the face and pretended to be a loving wife, and the whole time they were staging crimes in my neighborhood near where I live using a fucking look-alike. Not an exact twin, a look-alike. In other words, they'll pick a dude from their ranks that resembles their target, and then they just dress up that person like their target. Do you have a specific hat you wear? Do you have a specific type of a coat you wear? Well, guess what? That's what they'll do. They'll get a hat just like yours. They'll get a coat just like yours. And they'll mimic your mannerisms and everything. And then here's what they do. They'll hang around children is what they do. They'll have that double hang around children. And then that double's partners in law enforcement will take photogenic photos of that double dressed like their target near these children. And you usually get back shots or side shots of the double with children. And this is how they frame people as pedophiles. And they have a name for it. They call it pedifying. That's right. They have a name for it. It's a cop slang term that local authorities here in Portland, Oregon use on a regular basis when they're with one another or with people they trust. Now, how do I know about this? How do I know? Because I fucking caught their goddamn fucking asses in the act. And I caught them admitting on a goddamn audio recorder. I put a fucking audio recorder in my wife's purse. And I caught their fucking asses in the act using a goddamn double to commit a fucking murder. And they were trying to set me up for their crimes. And they were using a double with minors. And they fucking laughed about it. And they fucking bragged about it. They went straight to I put my audio recorder in my wife's purse. And I caught the whole fucking thing. The whole fucking thing. And there were several of them involved. Most of them were officers. Most of them were female. There was 2 male officers involved, and the rest there was several people involved, 2 of which were male. The rest were all the other 5 or so were female. So there were several officers, and some of them were civilians that were sleeping around with cops. In other words, cops' girlfriends. And since law enforcement's girlfriends get cash money from law enforcement to do this shit to people, technically they're whores. Technically. So essentially, I caught several law officers and their whores committing a fucking murder, and they were using a fucking double, and I caught the whole damn thing on an audio recorder, and after they got done with their crime, they all left, and they went straight to Clackamas Walmart, which is in Happy Valley, which is very, very close. It's just on the outskirts of being inside Portland, Oregon. They went straight to Clackamas Walmart, where they bragged to my wife's sister, Vicky Rosales, about what they all just did. And then when they got into the back of the store at Clackamas Walmart, they sat in the break room there, and they laughed and bragged about how easy it is for Officer Eric Carlson to impersonate me. And they were all cracking jokes because Officer Eric Carlson, my wife's lover, the cop, the son of a bitch that committed a murder that morning, was sitting in there dressed like me, and everybody in that fucking store was cracking jokes about how he was dressed like me. And Joni and Vicky, my wife and her sister, were laughing and bragging about how easy it is for him to impersonate me. This is right after they got done committing a fucking murder. Walmart employees were laughing about all this shit. They didn't know that Officer Eric Carlson and my wife and their buddies in law enforcement committed a fucking murder that morning. But they did know that they were using Officer Eric Carlson as a double to frame me as a pedo. And they were all laughing and shit about it. It was funny and amusing to everybody at Clackamas Walmart that they framed people this way. Law enforcement essentially had Walmart recruited into these kind of activities a long time ago. So Walmart employees were treating it like they wanted to know what's happening. So Joni, my wife, and her sister, and their buddies in law enforcement were filling everybody in, basically telling them that they were setting me up that morning. They're even telling them how. The only difference is they're not admitting that they committed a murder. They committed a murder. That's the only thing they're not mentioning to the Walmart employees. But the Walmart employees knew they were framing me. And they were laughing about it in the fucking break room. And for the first 3 hours they were in that store, my wife and one of those female officers spent 3 hours using Walmart printers to print flyers, giving me the blame for the fucking murder they all just committed. And the whole time they were doing this, Walmart employees, particularly the Walmart employees that worked the clothing department, was helping Officer Eric Carlson, the double, to set me up further inside that store because he was acting as a double inside the store. And they were talking about taking back shots of him and side shots of him while he followed children around inside Clackamas Walmart. And the female employees at Walmart were using their cell phones to take side shots and back shots. And they all went into the back of the store and were laughing and bragging about all this shit. Laughing and fucking bragging about it. My wife was in the back of the store printing flyers, giving me the blame for a murder they all just committed at the time. And my wife's purse was in her locker nearby, and oh gee, my audio recorder was inside her purse, still fucking running. This is what we have for government, folks. Do you see why people go postal nowadays? Because we have a fascist fucking government that organizes people into criminal operations. Technically, it's organized crime, but since government is funding it and authorizing it and organizing it, they don't give a fuck. And when anybody tries to charge them or accuse them of a crime, they get ganged up on and they get labeled by the government. And nobody will take a complaint. No attorney will listen to my case. No doctor will help me, even though my wife confessed in writing she's a poisoner. No police officer will take a complaint from me. Calling 911 will get them to my door, but they will not take my complaint and they will not help me. They will immediately put on a pretense of mental illness. This is one of the reasons why they poison people, because you can't act normally when you're poisoned. You're debilitated, and they could easily say, "Oh, the person's a drug addict or something." That's what they'll say to explain your deteriorated condition, and that's why they poison people. When this is why they told my wife to poison me, because I had no way to get help. The police made damn sure I couldn't get help at a hospital. When I went to a hospital, no doctor would help me. No doctor would take a toxicology test. They would just look me in the face and literally bald-faced lie and say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Wager, I don't know what's wrong with you." But they kind of smirk when they fucking do it. They smirk. Now that's the power, that's the influence law enforcement has with people with doctors in hospitals. That's the kind of fascist system we have. This is a fascist country. The USA is a fascist fucking country. You can sit there and watch TV, and you can listen to how people are charging cops, and how TV tries to give you the impression that cops are held accountable when charged with a fucking crime and blah blah blah. That's all fucking propaganda. The moment you, as a real human fucking being, actually stop watching TV and actually charge one of these son of a bitches with an actual crime, that's when you find out that the whole system's fascist, because you get ganged up on and nobody will take your complaint, and they'll immediately start treating you like you're mentally ill, and they'll treat you that way. They won't say it, but they'll imply it. They'll say, "Are you on medications?" Excuse me, my wife admitted in writing she's using antifreeze as a poison. She admitted in fucking writing. And I told them that. And guess fucking what? They'll just ignore that and say, "Are you on medication?" See, that's their way of implying. They're trying to cover up my complaint and trying to imply mental illness. This is how this government covers up crimes committed by organized people in law enforcement. And nobody takes complaints. All my 911 calls have been covered up by the Portland Police. A Sergeant Sierra Walker of the Portland Police Department admitted in writing to cover up of all my calls for help, including my 911 calls, and threatened me in writing, telling me I am not welcome to go to a fucking hospital. Now, that's the police and the hospital telling me I'm not welcome to help, any form of help. I am not welcome to report a crime. They just admitted they covered up all my complaints, all my calls for help, including my 911 calls. And they admitted I'm not welcome at a hospital. So technically, they've just confessed to premeditated murder. Sergeant Sierra Walker confessed to premeditated murder right there. What good is 911 when the Portland Police Department and the hospitals here are telling me I'm not welcome to help and that they're covering up my calls for help? What the hell do you think they're admitting to? That bitch, Sergeant Sierra Walker, admitted to this in fucking writing. So the fucking Portland damn police department and the Multnomah County pedophile sheriffs make damn sure their targets cannot get emergency forms of help in any fashion, shape, or form whatsoever in this fucking country. Now that's open fascism right there. Now, is people aware of these crimes? Most people have no fucking clue. Most people sit around, watch a fucking fascist TV set. Guess what? I don't have TV. There's a TV right there, but I don't have TV. It don't work. I don't have TV. I have no idea what current affairs are, and as far as I'm concerned, current affairs is nothing more than just what's the latest propaganda. I don't have TV anymore because ever since they've taken away the normal airwave system that they have, and they changed it where you have to have a special sort of a box or something to have TV. Ever since, I haven't had TV ever since, and that's not really by choice. It's just I'm too disabled to go get one. I'm disabled. I'm partially fucking paralyzed. I'm sitting here in shit ton of pain, partially paralyzed, bleeding constantly internally, which is no different than being shot and having internal wounds, or stabbed and having internal wounds. It's no fucking different. I'm wounded, I'm injured, and I have no fucking way of getting help. Nobody gives a shit. I'm surrounded by fucking sting operatives. I mean, my front window right there is open right there. So I'm pretty damn sure these so-called tenants around me could probably hear me sitting in here talking. Gee, do they give a shit? Hell no. You know why? Because they're fucking sting operatives. They have me surrounded by fucking sting operatives. Every time I leave here, they break into my apartment. Well, they don't actually break in because the fucking apartment manager just gives them a fucking key. So they just waltz in any damn fucking time I'm not here. And they'll tamper with anything and everything they want. They usually, they'll mess with my shit. I don't have much though, so I don't really. It's not like I have much to lose. Ooh, wow! I got a fucking crappy ass $10 chair right here. I got my coffee pot right there. I got this crappy ass $300 laptop, which is a crappy ass slow computer. Crappy slow computer. Got like a 1.3 gigahertz dual processor. That's pretty freaking slow. Running Windows 7. This thing cost me $300. Had to order it by because I can't really afford anything better. And I pretty much just use it for emails and for watching YouTube videos and trying to warn people. Basically, YouTube is my TV. This is pretty much all I have for TV is YouTube. I don't really have a TV set. I literally have no living relatives to help me. Police sting operations make damn sure that their victims, their targets, cannot get help. They destroy their target's name and reputation deliberately, and they usually do that behind their target's back so that they can't defend against it. And they literally destroyed my name and reputation. And it doesn't matter where I move to. I am not a convicted criminal. I have not done any fucking thing wrong. I am an innocent person who was being victimized by my wife and her side of the family and by their fuck buddies in law enforcement. And they use their power to label people, to defame people so that nobody will care their victims. So they use flyers to pedify people. And they pedified me while my wife and my daughters were sleeping around with a bunch of cops. They pedified me with flyers. Now, they did this, but they will not officially fucking admit to it. Because I'm not a convicted fucking criminal. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm an innocent person that did nothing wrong and was being targeted, and the whole time they were setting me up using a goddamn double that was sleeping around with my wife. That double's partners was sleeping around with my wife's daughters. So they unofficially pedify me with flyers behind my back. And nobody has the decency to presume that I'm innocent and to tell me about this. And instead, everybody talks about me behind my back instead, thinking I'm some sort of a bad guy because they pedified me behind my back. In other words, they'll go around the neighborhood and say, yeah, that dude that lives in that apartment, he's a pedo. That's what they'll say. That's all it takes. Guess what, people? That's all it takes. And they don't give a shit if you catch them doing it. I've already caught these fuckers doing this shit in 2009 on video. And you know what? There's nobody gives a shit. News media don't give a shit. Law enforcement don't give a shit. Nobody gives a shit. Attorneys don't give a shit. So they're free to pedify, they're like a fucking mob, like a fucking gang. They're free to run around and pedify anybody they want to without having to back up formal charges. And by doing this, they literally isolate their target, namely me, in this case me. They isolate their target from any form of help or assistance. I can't get help from my neighbors because they pedophiled me. I can't get help from calling 911 because my wife and daughters were sleeping around with cops, and those cops gave my wife permission to poison me, and the police covered it up at the hospital using their power of influence. So I literally have no form of help, and most attempts on my part to contact people via the internet is covered up and suppressed by authorities. I'm going to have to presume it's FBI, since I think FBI for the most part polices the internet. So I think they have my internet connection routed to some sort of a server that the FBI controls, because I can't really get help. I can use a search engine, and like I can use Google search engine, for instance, and I can type dog on the Google search engine, and I'll only get 50 pages. Excuse me. There should be millions of fucking pages. I can type cat on Google, and same thing, I'll get about 50 pages. I can type help in Google search. Same thing. I only get about 50 pages. I can type attorney in Google search, and I only get about 50 pages. So no matter what I type on Google search, when I do a Google search, I only get around 50 pages, regardless of what searching term I use. You would think, there's got to be millions and millions of pages for like dog or cat. I only get 50 pages. And it doesn't matter what I type. I can type emergency help, and guess what? I only get about 50 pages or less. I can type attorney. I'll get about, 20 to 50 pages. That's it. That's it. That's it. So the fucking government is literally controlling my ability, blocking me from finding any form of help. I think they have me routed into some sort of an FBI or NSA fucking ass server where my options, as far as searches go, are extremely limited. So I haven't been able to find help from anybody. No matter who I try to contact via the internet, I haven't been able to find help. No form of help. I can sit here and say, help, help. Guess what? It don't get help. It gets my wife's fuck buddies law enforcement at the door, and they either assault me, or they batter me, or they immediately put on a bullshit pretense of mental illness. One or the other, or a combination thereof. And not a soul that responds to my 911 call will actually take my complaint and act on it. They'll change the subject. And they usually, instead of allowing me to explain what's going on, they interrupt every time and then change the subject. They don't want me to explain my complaint to them. They want only me to talk about what they want to talk about, which is why they change the subject. And it's their way of not taking a complaint and making it known they're not going to take a complaint. They intentionally make this shit known. Now, I have received death threats from people in law enforcement. I have repeatedly had plainclothes officers come to my door to harass me. repeatedly. Repeatedly. And this apartment manager that runs this fucking dump is pals with these people, and she's helping them to set my ass up. This is how the hell you think they can get into my apartment when I leave without actually breaking down the fucking door? Because the fucking apartment manager gives law enforcement a fucking key. They tamper with my shit when I'm not here. I've spent like $350 for this refrigerator right here. This small black refrigerator. We have that big refrigerator right there, but I don't have any lock. There's no locks on it, and my daughter uses that fucking refrigerator, so I don't want to use that refrigerator. I can't trust my food around her. She's sleeping around with these cops too. So I had to buy my own fridge and put a lock on it in order to keep my food. And then I have to buy enough food to last me a month, and I don't have a vehicle, and I can't drive because they poisoned me so damn badly that even if I had a vehicle, I couldn't drive. So I have to use that granny cart over there in order to go buy groceries. And I'm literally surrounded by people that just don't give a shit. They're either civilians in a sting operation, involved in this sting operation, or they're undercover officers that are paid to be here to set my ass up. They constantly stage shit. In prostitution stings and drug bust stings, what do? They stage shit. They stage events. They stage crimes. And they do it for video surveillance. And they're constantly doing this shit. Now, I'm surrounded by these people. Now, the majority of people here in this huge apartment complex area are not sting operatives. The majority are not, but they're normal tenants, but they're normal tenants that have been turned against me because law enforcement and the apartment manager and the civilian sting operatives that have me surrounded here have pedophiled me behind my back and turned everybody against me with false allegations behind my back. You know, this is why they do it, because you can't defend against it, and nobody will tell you they're doing it. Not a soul will come up to me and say, hey, dude, you know that your apartment manager is calling you a pedo behind your back? You know, nobody will tell me this. Nobody has the decency to tell me. So this is how they get away with this shit. Now, I already know the majority of people in this apartment area. This is pretty relatively. There's quite a few apartments. I'd say there's about, 30 apartments here, maybe 40, 30 or 40 apartments. There might be more. I'm not exactly sure. There's 3 large buildings with 2 floors. Makes up this apartment area, and quite a few apartments. And like I said, I'm literally surrounded. Now, there are some sting operatives in a couple apartments that is right directly across from mine on the other side of the courtyard, and they're there for the specific purpose of staging events for video surveillance. That's what they're there for. The ones that are directly surrounding me, in other words, directly below me and right on each side of me, they're here to act as witnesses against me. They're not trying to stage things, but they are destroying my name and reputation, and they're here to act as witnesses against me should I act in self-defense. See, this is why they surround their target, because they'll have multiple people to testify against me. That's why. If they're my next door neighbors, then guess what? Then law enforcement can use them as witnesses. That's why they surround their target with operatives, whether it be undercover law enforcement or their civilian buddies. Now, this apartment here that's on the other side of this wall next to me, this is the end apartment, and this is the one that that's the apartment where that has attic access. So that's the apartment law enforcement specifically is renting. Undercover law enforcement officers. This apartment down below, law enforcement is renting it, but they have civilian operatives in it, and they're there for the sole purpose of staging events. They usually stage events when I leave the apartment. They get very active when I leave the apartment. What they do is they'll deliberately, as I'm going down the stairs, I don't leave this apartment except like once a month, okay? But when I do leave this apartment to go to the bank and to do grocery shopping, as I'm going down the stairs, the apartment manager and the people that is directly below me will usually step out of the apartment because they want to be in the same shot. Remember, I'm under video surveillance by these son of a bitches. So as I'm going down the stairs, and it takes me a while to get down the stairs because I'm disabled. I have to use a cane to walk. I can't get down those stairs very quickly. And as I'm going down the stairs, the apartment manager will usually walk by, either walking away or walking towards. And the people that are directly below me, they usually step out of their apartment and stand or sit near the front of their doorway. So the apartment manager, which is kitty corner down there, which is at the bottom, but below this apartment that's next door here, she's down there, and the people that is directly below me, they specifically make sure they are nearby as I'm going down the stairs, right at the bottom of the stairway. And they basically converge down below. There's a stairway that goes down like that. See, when I go out the door, I walk this way and go over to the stairs, and then I go down the stairs. And as I'm going down the stairs, they converge right down here. And the apartment manager is usually going this way or going this way, and the people that are directly below usually are standing just outside their doorway or sitting just outside their doorway. They repeat the process over and over and over. They specifically wait for me to leave. Now, this is how I know I'm under video surveillance, because they know when I leave the apartment, because they deliberately stage these events. Now, they're doing this because they're trying to build a video history. They're sting operatives. Just like they're no different than prostitution sting operatives or drug busting operatives. They're using video surveillance, and the sting operatives want video surveillance of them near me, so that they can have video surveillance of me near them, and so that they can testify against me. And they repeat the process over and over and over again. That's the one thing about sting operations, is that they always repeat everything. They repeat it over and over again because they want to get it just right. And they do this because they plan, because at some point they plan on having some sort of a trial, or in case they have a trial. More often than not, guess what? They don't. They just kill their targets. But if they are in a situation where there's going to be a trial, they want to have evidence that backs up their bullshit. So they stage this shit over and over again. Now, the person that's next door here, he's just some fat slob that's either a relative of law enforcement or a buddy to law enforcement. He's not in law enforcement, but he is a civilian sting operative. He doesn't really stage. He doesn't do much other than to make tapping. He'll make tapping noises or shit over there in that apartment, and sometimes he'll stand at his doorway next door and he'll toot some sort of a horn or something. I don't know what the hell it is, if it's a horn or what, but it has a weird ass sound. It kind of sounds like an artificial belch kind of a device. It's not, doesn't sound exactly like a belch, but it kind of sounds like a belch. I don't know what the hell it is, but he stands in his fucking doorway, and he usually does this around the time I usually go to sleep. So he's just trying to be an annoyance. He tries to annoy me around the time that I'm trying to go to sleep. He'll make some kind of an annoying noise. He has some kind of a device. He's not actually belching. He has some sort of a device. And he'll do this like several times in a row, like once every 30 seconds. And it's quite loud. And it doesn't sound like a whistle, and it doesn't sound like an actual belch. It's sort of in between. So I don't know what the hell I don't know what the hell it is, to be honest. But he stands at his. I actually opened the door and looked when he was doing it once a week or two ago. I actually got pissed off, and I just got up and just opened the door and looked out to see who the fuck was doing it. And it was fat. That was that fat ass motherfucker. All his lights in his apartment was out. His doorway was wide open. He was standing right inside his doorway. His doorway's wide open. He's standing in his doorway, and he's using some kind of he was trying to hide the fact that he was there. Like I said, his lights were out. And he's standing just inside his doorway, so he didn't want me to see him. And he was using some kind of a device that made a loud, annoying noise, and he was doing it over and over again. And he usually does this around the time that I go to sleep. Sometime between 10 p.m. and 12 midnight. It's around that time frame that I usually go to sleep. And it's usually right at that time when he does that. And the person that's below him, he's in that apartment on the other side of this wall here. Now, the person that's below him, in the apartment down below him, there's an old retired dude who's disabled. And I'm under the belief that he is a retired police officer or a retired sheriff or maybe a retired Oregon State police officer. I don't know. He's a retired something in law enforcement. And I can tell he's a pro. He's a pro. Okay? He knows what the fuck he's doing. Unlike the rest of these idiots. The rest of these idiots, the people here, these people are the muscle. They're the actual law enforcement officers that look like cops, act like cops, they're built like cops, and there's usually more than one of them in there. And they're the muscle here waiting for me to act in self-defense. The dude that's the old dude that's below this person that's next door here, the dude that's down there, the retired dude, which is below him, he's an old guy. I'm under the belief that he's a retired person from law enforcement. So they recruit people that are from law enforcement that are retired into this sting shit. And I can tell he's a pro. He knows what he's doing. He's a lot smarter than the rest of these idiots. He's a hell of a lot smarter. He's very... I've witnessed people from sting operations all my fucking life. Okay? I know when I'm dealing with a pro, and that dude is a fucking pro. So I know he's retired law enforcement. He knows what he's doing. He loves to perform for video surveillance. He deliberately acts friendly, and he deliberately tries to engage me in conversation, and he deliberately mumbles for the video surveillance. And the reason why he mumbles, because he doesn't want me to understand what he's saying. He just wants me to nod to what he's saying. And you know why? Because he has me on video surveillance, and they can always change his audio of that video surveillance to where he's saying something else. And that's why he deliberately and intentionally mumbles. Now, I've heard that son of a bitch talking to other people, and he speaks perfectly clear. But every time he tries to talk to me, he deliberately fucking mumbles. So he's trying to be sneaky and smart about it. Of course, I don't fall for this shit because I've been around these kind of people all my fucking life, and I sure to hell don't get intimidated or scared by a bunch of organized criminals. I mean, if they actually want to go the court route, I'll be more than happy to beat the crap out of them in front of their own stacked jury. Because you know why law enforcement never goes to jail? You know why law enforcement never goes to jail? Because you're law enforcement. Just like law enforcement controls things, they control the jury pool the same damn way. Law enforcement always fills the jury pool with their buddies, their civilian buddies, and their civilian girlfriends. That's why law enforcement never goes to jail. And that's why government is never held accountable in court. So your corrupt government controls everything and is corrupt, and they get away with this shit. And all they have to do is give people the appearance. You know, they keep people preoccupied with entertainments, with TV and Hollywood movies and whatnot, and constant propaganda on news and shit to keep people preoccupied. So most people have work issues or life issues or entertainment issues to distract them from the reality of the fact that this country is fascist. And is actually openly fascist, but people are just too distracted and bombarded by so much propaganda that people just don't wake up to it. And I can understand that because I used to be just like that. I used to be true American, patriotic to the end, America, fuck yeah, all that shit. I used to be just like that, okay? Not anymore. Not after local authorities recruited my wife and her family and our daughters into sting operations. And they decided to target me and my parents. I discovered what this kind of shit for these people is sport to them. They treat it that way. It's not easy for me to walk. I'm in a lot of pain. They treat this like sport. They don't care. I can call 911 right now, and I'll just get a bunch of fucking ass pieces of fucking shit in uniform at my door, none of which will take a fucking complaint. None. They won't even identify who the fuck they are, let alone take a complaint. They'll just, if I try to explain what's going on, they'll fucking interrupt and then change the subject. Each and every time. Or they'll just attack me the moment I turn around. They usually try to get one officer to get behind me so that they can attack me from behind. They've already done that before. Yeah, I've been attacked by law enforcement. No trial. Never had a trial for jack shit in my entire fucking life. But I've been battered by fucking police. They have no intention of having a trial, really, since they were sleeping around with my wife and daughters. They have no intention of having a trial. They just want to pedify me so nobody will care if I'm murdered. And then they're just going to murder me off. That's why they told my wife to just poison me to death. They told my wife they'll make sure I can't get help at a hospital. And they told her to just pretend to be a loving wife and to poison me to death. And they told her to pedify me behind my back so nobody would care. Okay, that's what we have for government in this country. You know what? I was a plasma donor when the Portland police and the Multnomah County sheriffs gave my wife permission to be a fucking serial killer. And the Portland police and the Multnomah County Sheriffs used their power of influence to deny me any form of help at a hospital. While I'm in my ER room, hoping to get help in severe pain from being poisoned, the fucking Portland police and the county sheriffs were out in the hallway chatting with my doctor and palling around with my doctor, and they were hinting very strongly to my doctor to not help me and to not take a toxicology test.